Peace, friends of refined investing. Today we're going to talk about something that, in my opinion, is still very much or actually completely flying under the radar. Because if you've been involved in the XRP space for a while, then you probably know one of the oldest accusations out there. Ripple only sells XRP. Ripple doesn't make any real money. Ripple only exists to dump XRP on the market. That's been said for years, whether it was Bitcoin maxes, XRP critics, or just influencers or analysts in general, whatever. Basically, just from anyone who wanted to say something against XRP, and that's exactly why what has now come to light could definitely be much more important than many currently believe. Because for the first time in a long while, there are also indications that Ripple is now generating revenue that has absolutely nothing to do directly with XRP sales. And if that's true, then one of the biggest arguments against Ripple and XRP basically just completely collapses. But I'd say that's what today's about. We'll take a look at that in a moment. Before we get started, of course, make sure to give a thumbs up. I'd be happy if you still believe in crypto, are building your holdings, and say that this is the future. For everyone new, of course, feel free to subscribe to the channel. In the background, you can see my crypto campus. Right now, we're on the crypto radar. The link is in the description. Feel free to check it out, look at the courses, and give it a try. There are a lot of things on the site by now. We're currently expanding it day by day. I'd definitely be happy about that, but let's get started now. To really understand all this, we need to go back for a moment. A few years ago, there was already a statement from Brad Garlinghouse, which at the time sparked a lot of discussion. Basically, he said something along the lines of Ripple wouldn't have been profitable at that time without XRP sales. And of course, that exact statement was immediately exploited. Suddenly, people were saying Ripple only sells XRP. Ripple, on the other hand, doesn't really have a proper business model. Ripple lives off dumping. Ripple is just a selling machine, etc. And honestly, back then, a lot of people just stopped thinking and blindly adopted all the headlines. There's simply a point that many people still don't understand to this day. XRP simply had to be distributed. Someone had to actually put XRP into circulation because, as an alternative, for example, with Bitcoin, that just happens through mining. With XRP, a completely different approach was taken. No energy-intensive mining, no huge electricity costs or anything like that. But for that, a different mechanism for distribution simply had to be created, and that's exactly where Ripple comes into play. That doesn't automatically mean dumping. It simply means, first and foremost, that the asset just needs to be distributed. That's also an interesting and exciting aspect. A lot of critics act as if every XRP distribution is automatically something completely negative, but let's take a look at the alternatives. In many other projects, tokens are distributed for free. What happens as a result? The recipients sell and the money leaves the ecosystem. End of story. With Ripple, it's been completely different from the very beginning. XRP is sold. The proceeds are used to build infrastructure. And that's exactly where the huge difference from all the other projects begins. Let's take a look at what Ripple has bought and built over the past few years. For example, Hidden Road, RLOSD, Ripple Prime, custody, treasury solutions, institutional infrastructure, and suddenly you get a completely different picture. Because, if all the proceeds are actually used to increase the long-term use of XRP, then we're no longer just talking about dumping or anything like that. We're talking about investments, and definitely on a very, very large scale. Now, we come to another point that really interests me today because, for the first time it was publicly discussed that Ripple could generate around $1 billion in revenue by the end of 2026, and that's simply independent of the XRP holdings on their balance sheet, right? You really need to let that sink in for a moment. $1 billion, not from XRP sales, but from the actual business itself. And if that's true, in my opinion, it completely changes the whole discussion and the entire project, putting it on a much, much higher level. And that's something many other projects, or 99% of them, simply can't compete with. Because then, suddenly, we're no longer talking about a company that has to sell XRP. We're talking about a company that earns money on its own, and that's a huge difference compared to all the other projects. Just imagine Ripple doesn't sell a single XRP anymore, for example. Could the company still exist then? Of course, right? So, according to that statement, definitely. So, if it's restructured like that and built up over the next few years as currently planned, then yes, probably all the critics who are still extremely against XRP and so on will also change their minds. Why is this important for XRP now? It's pretty simple because it just eliminates a huge risk, and many investors have always had in the back of their minds. Yeah, what happens if Ripple ever needs money? What happens if Ripple ever runs into trouble? What happens if they have to sell everything? If the operational business has really become as strong as is currently being suggested, then that argument loses a lot of its significance, and I don't think we can even imagine yet what the coming years have in store for us. And in my opinion, this is where things get really exciting because Ripple is slowly developing into something completely different. In the past, for many people, Ripple was simply the company behind XRP, but today we're seeing something completely different. We're seeing payment solutions, stablecoins, brokerage, custody, institutional services, tokenization, and liquidity flows. It's slowly starting to look more and more like a complete financial corporation, step by step, and that's exactly where enormous long-term value could emerge. I'm extremely curious to see what's coming our way. What also fascinates me is how many of the criticisms of XRP have just gradually disappeared over the past few years. For one, of course, the claim that XRP is a security has been refuted in court. Then people said XRP has no use, but now more and more institutional use cases are actually happening. People said Ripple has no business model, but now suddenly numbers are on the table. That doesn't mean XRP is going to hit $100 tomorrow, but it shows old narratives are crumbling and many people really didn't know what they were talking about all these years because they're simply not involved in the subject. But let's get to the conclusion. I mean, the most interesting part isn't really the announcement about over $1 billion in revenue. The most interesting part is what this billion actually says about Ripple at the end of the day, you know? I mean, if Ripple actually becomes a profitable company that grows independently of XRP sales, then one of the biggest criticisms against Ripple and XRP simply disappears, right? And that's exactly why this announcement could be much more important in the long run than many currently suspect. So, yes, feel free to share your opinion about it in the comments. Is this one of the most important Ripple moments of the past few years for you? Or do you say, okay, it's overrated? Right now, everything is still very, very uncertain. Yeah, no idea what will happen in the future. Many people trust in XRP, but aren't really 100% familiar with the subject. They can only imagine that a lot will happen in the financial system in the future, and that many things will be changed, which is inevitable, right? That's foreseeable too. Let's wait and see. But for me, it's simply one of the few crypto projects that I still truly and deeply believe in. So let's see what the future brings. But yeah, that's basically it. Of course, feel free to give a thumbs up at the end. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Feel free to check out the crypto campus. As I said, MonetenDave.com or CryptoRadar24.de. Both domains work, or just take a look in the video description. All the links are there, or if you need a wallet or anything like that, there are currently discounts available too. And yeah, with that, we'll hear from each other again in the next few days. Take care, keep your chin up, and don't go too wild. In that sense, peace, peace.